buzz on the internet. I am not finished yet. This is all part of the plan. We about to get digital rich. Digital rich. Digital.
Welcome to the industry, babies. This is episode 1 on the Ball Institute Network. We're excited to start off a second podcast. If you are here from the Deep Drive, our other baseball podcasts, those are every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. But if you want updates on the industry, babies, which will be a new guest every episode, you can follow us. You can follow me on Twitter, or you can join us in the Ball Institute Discord, where we have all action for every ball sport you could imagine. But I'm so excited. It's a perfect time on essentially a basketball day off, for all intents and purposes, a basketball day off, to have our first guest, Minnesota basketball reporter Andrew Dukowitz. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, sir. You got it.
Great. I had like 3 options I could go there, but Andrew, it's an honor to have you on. Let us know a little bit about your background and what you cover for Minnesota sports.
Yeah, I have a pretty not characteristic background, I'd say. I went to college and I got a degree in nursing. For the last 11 years, I've been an RN up in Minnesota, serving kind of the northeast Minneapolis area, doing wound care in people's houses. And about 4 years ago, my wife and I kind of came to a collective decision of I'm going to make a run at doing sports media. And my expectations were about as small as possible, because when you're in high school and college, everyone tells you that no one makes it in this industry. You're not going to really amount to much. So I started off hosting a football podcast, which I am a football fan, not a football expert. So that was interesting. Ended up turning that into a writing job with Zone Coverage. Was there for about 2 years before I got credentialed with the Minnesota Lynx last summer. Evidently made a good enough impression with the Lynx where they wanted me back this summer, and also referred me to the Timberwolves. So last winter was my first year being credentialed with the Timberwolves. And then this summer, the Gophers reached out to me and asked if I wanted to cover women's basketball and some men's basketball stuff as well, but mostly women. And yeah, the rest has been history. Now I've kind of established myself in the beat and have a little bit of a credit behind my name. And it's been a whirlwind. And at every stop, I've just said, if this is as far as it goes, that'll be great. But then something weird happens. So here we are.
I completely relate with the having a little bit of a different background. I mean, I majored in math at tech school, and here I am on Twitch talking about sports. So, you follow passions. If there's a lesson, like you are always. It seems like even in your tone of your tweets, you're always smiling. You're always happy. So you're happy where you are, and I'm happy where I am. So it's a little lesson to start off the day. But yeah, everyone go read Andrew's articles, because I've been to Minnesota a few times. If you know me, I'm not a Minnesota sports fan, but I love me some Minnesota Lynx basketball for a variety of reasons. If you followed me for a while, we'll get into some of those in this episode, but I read Andrew's articles. I read his article, I believe it was yesterday, about Cheryl Reeve, for Coach of the Year. And I think it's a good segue into talking about like everything the Lynx have been through since last year. Last year, for those of you who follow me for the sports betting stuff and the stuff we do at Ball Institute with sports betting, I was one of the wildest rides I've had in my betting career was buying in on the Minnesota Lynx very, very early last year at plus 900. They were not one of the favorites to win the finals. They made it to the finals, and if you are not from New York, I think you can agree with me that they should have won that series. And the idea of being comfortable with saying that Minnesota was robbed of that series kind of starts with listening to Cheryl Reeve talk after Game 7 about how they were robbed in broad daylight. LeBron James tweeting about Alana Smith's foul at the end of regulation is going to live rent-free in my head for a long time. Also, by the way, happy birthday, Alana Smith. And I think going back all the way to the finals last year, I guess, Andrew, for you, someone who's following this team like pretty much every day, what were your expectations heading into this season? And do you think they kind of like aligned with like the team's expectations versus the fans' expectations, especially given that like the off season, a lot of noise came out of like a bunch of these contending teams and not as much out of the Lynx. So given that, what were your expectations headed to this season?
Yeah, just real quick. Cheryl, after the game, her first quote was, "That bleep was stolen from us," and it's been widely reported now. She never got fined. So when you come out, first presser after losing the finals, and your first quote is not only a swear word, but a swear word accusing the league of stealing a championship, and you don't get fined. That's for the conspiracy theorists. That's a good place to start. The Lynx in general this year, though, my expectations were championship or bust. Listening to the players after they got back in Minneapolis after that Game 5 loss, the quote that stuck out to me the most was Nafisa Collier. One of the local beat reporters up here asked her, what did you learn from this finals experience? And she said to make sure the game isn't close enough for the refs to matter. And that is how they have approached this entire season. They're the number one offense, the number one defense, number one in true shooting as of yesterday, number one assist to turnover ratio. They are clear cut the best team in the league in basically every category except for reboundings. And I believe they're fifth in rebounding. So they have come into this season wanting to kind of almost embarrass the league. I mean, be so good that it doesn't matter. And they've accomplished their goal. They clinched the 1 seed about 2 weeks ago. They clinched the 1 seed with a 6-game lead and 5 games remaining. They accomplished their mission. Now in the offseason, it was interesting because they really didn't spend a lot of time trying to figure out what's broke. I think Cheryl and the team really felt that this team's superpower was kind of their connectiveness, how much they bonded together. Fee's leadership, the personalities really kind of matched, I guess. And the only kind of move they made was bringing Carly Samuelson in from the Mystics, who a couple weeks into the season broke her foot and then was traded at the trade deadline for Dejanay Carrington. And Dejanay has been just an awesome addition to this team.
Rumius, we are reading chat. If you have Minnesota Lynx questions, ask Andrew or me, and I will make Andrew answer them.
Yes.
And if you are watching on YouTube, join us on twitch.tv/AhanR for these episodes. Yeah, the Minnesota Lynx, like this season, I think the expectations from me and what they've actually done this season, there's been like a slight disalignment, and that's coming from someone who picked them to win the championship this year. And what I thought was when a playoff run starts, like seeds for all intents and purposes don't matter to a certain extent, right? And you can obviously you fight for seed for home court advantage, et cetera, et cetera. But I thought that the Lynx would actually lose more regular season games than obviously, like, I know what, I didn't expect them to break the franchise record so easily. But beyond that, I just thought that they could struggle a little bit in the regular season grind, just because like they didn't have as active of an off season as like the Atlanta Dreams of the world, the Liberties of the world. I mean, I think I was making fun of the Liberty for making so many volume moves over the course of the last few months, solely because my agenda is going to return to, they know they need a lot more to beat the Lynx fair and square this time. But to me, like, a lot of teams were making moves, and the Lynx kind of just like trusted that Natisha Heidemann would take the leap, trusted that Jessica Shepard's return would amount to being a very good backup, and trusting that Nafisa Collier would turn from a top 2 player in the world to like this like Hall of Fame, everyday Hall of Fame level player, which he has turned into. And to me, I thought maybe that's not enough to dominate the regular season, but we'll see when the playoffs come, and they'll probably be fine. Instead, they pretty much win every game that they don't shoot themselves in their foot. And I think we'll talk in a minute about like who could possibly give them a scare in the playoffs. But I think the biggest tell of what's happened in the regular season is Bridget Carlton, who is a huge part of last year's playoff run, etc. Bridget Carlton has had a down season. and the Minnesota Lynx are one of the best teams in league history. Like, that's the most telling to me. That shows how much everyone else has improved. Like you said earlier, franchise record, 31 wins already, second best team in franchise history by winning percentage. 2016 was the best. And in that context, I want to talk about some individual players and how they have stepped up to turn this Lynx team into what it is. For example, like the DJ Carrington trade. I was, as someone who wanted I'm a Seattle Storm fan, for those of you who don't know. I'm a Seattle Storm fan, and when the DJ Carrington move happened, I was just like, how are they going to lose a game now? And it's like they flipped the two players on their roster not really contributing. Like Diamond Miller had some nice runs with the Lynx, but they basically flipped the two players on the roster that weren't contributing and got and I used to compare DJ Carrington to Jade McDaniels before she got in Minnesota.
Yep.
They got a light player for the two players that weren't contributing. So that was a genius move to me, and I completely agree that Dallas was misusing DJ Carrington. We don't want to see DJ Carrington, with all due respect, we don't want DJ Carrington out here playing point guard, and she doesn't have to on this team, which is a beautiful thing. So some of these individual success stories we can talk about. I think the starting thing is, am I correct, Andrew, that the Lynx sent a campaign for Nafisa Collier to win MVP and not the other potential awards? And also with that, are there other people you would want to throw your hat in the ring for if you had a vote?
Yeah, they sent out a cool little kind of crystal ball looking thing for Fee's MVP candidacy. I will say, Lynx PR, if you're listening to this, little downgrade. Last year they sent out Fee branded hot sauce, which that was like, all right, that's a cool little one. This one is a little bit more tame, I'd say. But I think to piggyback off of your Dijonay point, they trade Diamond Miller, who was getting spot minutes at best, didn't really have a whole lot of trust with the team, and unfortunately, like, she's the second overall pick. She still has value. It's just she can't play on a team that needs her to not turn the ball over and needs her to play smart defensively. And they trade Carly Samuelson, who's out for the year, for Dijonay. And Dijonay just immediately comes in and fits. She's played with Courtney Williams and Natisha Heidemann before. Her kind of just drive and effort is really just in tune with what Cheryl looks for in players. And she's been awesome. And when that trade happens, I used the phrase in my writing of just, it's not fair. Like, the best defense in the league just acquired the all first team shooting guard from last season to come off the bench and relieve Kayla McBride, who always is a above average defender, Bridget Carlton, who's an above average defender. Like, it just didn't seem like it's almost a credit to like the Dallas Dallas as a city of trading Dijonay, trading Luka Doncic, and trading Micah Parsons. It just, maybe there's something in the water down there at this point. But Fee, I think, in recent weeks has started to lose her ground as the MVP, just because Asia Wilson is dragging a Aces team to the playoffs and might be the 2 seed. And this is an Aces team. I looked it up last night. They are 8th in plus minus, and they're going to be the 2 seed because Asia is scoring 30 points, 14 rebounds every single night for over a month. Like, I think she has some serious claim to that MVP award now. I think if you're looking at Fee, she is 1 3-point make away from having a 50-40-90 season as the reigning defensive player of the year. She has a 63% true shooting. She's the best player, unquestioned, on the best team. She has her case as well, and I think this will be a closer MVP like ballot than years past. I don't think it's Asia gets 50 votes and Fee gets 10. I think it's going to be a really close one. If I was going to say other players I think are deserving, Alana Smith for Defensive Player of the Year. Her numbers don't necessarily pop off the charts in terms of like rebound percentage, defensive rating, those type of things. But how the Lynx run their defense is funneling everything baseline to Alana Smith. So we see when Jessica Shepard comes in the game, or when, Fee plays and Land doesn't play, that this defense is just a completely different defense. They focus a lot more on switching and less about funneling. I think that means something, especially because this Lynx defense is, again, best in the league by a couple rating points. The other players, Jessica Shepard, I think, gets a little bit of run probably as sixth player of the year. She had the triple-double in one of her starts. She's a double-double machine when she gets minutes. Natisha Heidemann, also for sixth player of the year. She, up until, I believe, this Fever game, she had 3 straight 20-point games. Her three-point shooting is kind of resumed back to Connecticut standards. But yeah, there's also just Cheryl Reeve. I mean, she's putting together historically one of the best teams in the league without her superstar playing 11 out of the 44 games. I think she has a case too, but it'll be really interesting because it could be the Lynx kind of sweep the award series, or none of them could win because there is such transparency in this league now.
Shout out to those in stream. Ron Mux, always an OG of the stream. And shout out to Roomiest and Sports Junko 671 for the follows. I'm so glad you mentioned the Atlanta Smith thing as Defensive Player of the Year. Like, if anyone follows me, you know I've been pushing. I'm the guy who pushes the agendas that no one else wants to push. No matter what sport you follow me in, I'm going to be the guy that tells you that Bam Adebayo should have a Defensive Player of the Year award by now. And I know you cover Minnesota sports. If you follow me, you also know I think he should have won over Rudy Gobert at least one of those years. That's a conversation for another day. But my point is that the voting for awards is never going to fully represent what actually happens on the court. That's just never going to happen for any sport. And I should have, when I picked Nafisa Collier to win MVP before the season started, and she was like plus 600 on the betting market, maybe I should have bet on it then. But right now, even though she's chalk, I completely agree. I wouldn't fault you for voting Asia Wilson. And Nafisa Collier and Cheryl Reeve are clearly fine with her sitting a few games because they got bigger fish to fry. And with Atlanta Smith, like, the thing is, like, she's not going to win Defensive Player of the Year. We know this. The Lynx PR are not even trying with the little campaign, shenanigans. They're not even trying, but just to add a little more context to the numbers, I mean, Atlanta Smith ranks number 2 in the WNBA in block percentage, number 9 in steal percentage. And also offensively, by the way, she's having a hilarious season because she's number 7 in effective field goal percentage, number 19 in offensive rebound percentage, and going back to the defense, top 4 in defensive win shares and defensive rating. But to me, and the reason I say it's hilarious is because she's literally been me over the course of this season on the court. If anybody plays basketball with me, shoot the threes, do everything else right, can't make a free throw, but that has been amended.
At one point, she was shooting 40%. She's a 70% career shooter, shooting 40% from the free throw line. It's been a weird one for her.
It has been a little more amended recently. There was a point at which we were like, I think over a month into the season, she was shooting 28% from the free throw line. I always keep an eye on that stuff because that's just hilarious to me. But like, Natisha Heidemann and Jessica Shepard, like both 6th Player of the Year contenders. Like, when do you see that on the same team? And that brings me to my next point, which is like, who has been the biggest surprise for you on this team? Like, for me, it is by far Natisha Heidemann. And like, it's only right that the year that the stud buds are taking over the world, like Natisha Heidemann is playing like historic basketball, especially in context of what her career has been before this. She's always been a valuable player, but she's never been this kind of player where you're like, a lot of teams would want her to be the starting point guard. And she has literally been such a lifesaver to not force Kayla McBride into playing every single minute of every single game. Bridget Carlton having a down year doesn't matter. Just put Natisha Heidemann in there. And the most serendipitous thing to me is that it seems that every time Courtney Williams is not having a great game, Natisha Heidemann does, and vice versa. They've had each other's backs, and how sustainable that is, I don't know. We just have not seen a Lynx team this season where both of them have a bad game at the same time. And that's just so valuable to have. The fact that you can have someone who can do, a lot of the similar things as Courtney Williams off the bench. And Natisha Heideman's passing to me has just been like outstanding. Everyone's talking about the scoring. Her passing to me has been great. She gets everyone involved, and it's just an outstanding point guard to have. But of course, Jessica Shepard too, like a very important thing for our next point, which is who could possibly take this Lynx team. And Rumia thinks that the Aces have a real shot. I'm curious what your take on this is. If someone gives the Lynx trouble, who it would be. And I will add that perhaps the only meaningful game remaining in the regular season in the WNBA right now, when we are recording this, we're recording this on September 10th. September 11th is the last day of the regular season. The Lynx will play the Valkyries at home. They essentially have a chance to pick who they want to play in the first round, for all intents and purposes. Because it sounds weird to say this, but even though the Lynx are like clearly not really trying to win games of the last few games for obvious reasons, it sounds crazy that they're almost accidentally winning some of these games because they're just that dominant. Because like Jessica Shepard, Maria Kludnikova, they'll just come in and keep you in the game. But if they want to face the Valkyries in the first round, first expansion team to ever make the playoffs, if they want to face them, they should beat the Valkyries so that the Valkyries are the 8th seed and get to face the Lynx in the first round. If the Lynx lose this game to the Valkyries, this final regular season game, then the Valkyries get up to the 6th seed, and the Lynx would then have to face the 8th seed Seattle Storm. As someone who is a Storm fan, but also extremely unbiased and knows just how hilarious a Storm team can be, the Storm have beaten up on the Liberty this season. They have split the season series 2-2 with the Minnesota Lynx. Not everyone healthy on both sides for all of those games, but I was at the Commissioner's Cup game in Seattle where the Storm had a big comeback against the Lynx. If there's one thing the Lynx can be a little scared by, it is what you said at the top of the show, which is the one thing is the rebounding, because the Lynx are fine with sacrificing some of that size for the ability to switch 1 through 5. Like they can do it better than damn near any team in league history. They can switch 1 through 5, especially now with Dijon and Carrington. You can put a death lineup out there for defense of 1 through 5. And they're willing to be a dominant offensive team, be a dominant transition team, be a dominant defensive team for the giving up of size. But that opens up the door for you better be careful against teams that have size and have that experience. And that's what both the Seattle Storm and the Atlanta Dream have. And it explains why, if you look at the season series, those are the two teams that the Lynx have not walked over every single game against. So those are the two teams that have multiple wins against the Lynx in the regular season. The Storm with Nneka Ogwumike, Ezi Magbagor, and Dominique Malonga, who might be unguardable within the next couple of years. And then the Atlanta Dream with Brianna Jones and Brittany Griner, and Naz Hillman too can really hoop. So to me, those are the two teams that the Lynx could be worked by. I still think they win those series. But if there's a Connecticut Sun type scare like last year where they take a series to 5 and now series are up to 7, deeper into the playoffs, those are the opponents that can give them a scare. So ahead of tomorrow's game, I want the Lynx to try to face the Valkyries and not the Storm, as someone who wants the Lynx to go all the way. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. First round playoffs in the W are just weird, right? It's a 3-game series. I've kind of said who I want the Lynx to face is the team that's the worst 3-point shooting team, which Seattle. There's not a lot of variance. They don't have a lot of games where they are just blistering shooting from 3. I think their size poses problems, but also the Lynx have been able to kind of mitigate that pretty well. We've already seen the Skylar Diggins game where she goes nuts and then dances off the court. I'm not as worried about Seattle in a 3-game series. I think in a 5-game series, that one's probably going 5, but if I had to pick what team I'd prefer them to play, it would be the Valkyries. Just the top end talent isn't there. They do turn the ball over quite a bit. They're 10th in assist to turnover ratio. Their offensive rating isn't I mean, it isn't great. They're ninth. I would hope that, you know, if they get the Valkyries, it's probably a sweep. Whereas, you know, if they get the Storm, could the Storm steal one game? Probably. I don't think they'd be able to take two games. If I'm looking further down the line, I mean, the way the standings are lined up right now, it would be, you know, Minnesota takes either Valkyries or Storm in round one. Then they have New York, presumably in round two. New York has just had one of those seasons where just everything goes wrong. I mean, whether it's Brianna Stewart's bone bruise, JJ missing time, Sabrina now being injured, trying to integrate Meesman in midway through the season. They just, you know, it's one of those things where they look like a super team on paper, but a lot of times these teams that are just kind of middle of the pack offensive, defensive ratings, the reason they don't win championships is because like a sample size of an entire season doesn't usually get just overthrown at the very end, which I don't think all of a sudden they're going to just glue together and be able to play this beautiful game that's going to beat a Lynx team that's been kind of dominant ever since the Olympic break last year. So then that leaves, you know, in the finals, you're playing either Atlanta or Las Vegas. And Atlanta scares me quite a bit. They shoot a ton of threes. They have that variability where one game they'll shoot 55% from three and you don't win it because they're shooting the cover off the ball. And what do? Vegas, I know a lot of people in Minnesota, local media people have been saying that's kind of the team that the Lynx would struggle against, but it's hard for me to see the Lynx losing to the Aces in a series. I mean, Asia's individual dominance, I think, is one thing, but they just, again, it's been the sample size of an entire season. If you're 8th overall in net rating, despite winning 14 out of 15 games, there's something wrong there. I mean, there's something with your team that's just fundamentally not working, which Asia's dominance is one thing, but Asia also would have to face Alana Smith, Nafisa Collier for all 40 minutes of a game, and that's a tough ask. They also don't have that 3-point variance that Atlanta does. Atlanta's also a really good assisted turnover team. I believe they rank second in the league in assisted turnovers, so they don't make a lot of mistakes. They're the team that probably scares me the most at this point, just because no mistakes. They have the variance with if they get hot in 2 out of 7 games, they can just steal them off of shooting. And then, like you said, I mean, the Brittany Griner of it all is a massive problem. I mean, figuratively and literally, when you have someone out on the court that's 6'7", lands listed at 6'4". She's probably closer to 6'2", 6'3". Fee's 6'2". I mean, it's just going to be a problem in a 7-game series. Then it comes down to, can Brittany at her age kind of play the grueling minutes of an entire playoff series, be healthy by the finals, still be conditioned by the finals, which that's a question. She hasn't had a deep playoff run in, gosh, probably 3 or 4 years now. I mean, even with Phoenix last year, it was just to the second round. So I think the Lynx ultimately, I would put my money on them being the favorite and them winning the championship. I know if you're looking into like the last 10 games, I think they're 5-5 or 6-4 over the last 10, but this team really hasn't had anything to play for since maybe the middle of July. They slow played Fee coming back from an ankle injury to make sure she's right. I mean, they are focused on just being healthy at this point. So it's hard to really put a lot into the last 10, 15 games that they've played.
If you want any more evidence on how little the Lynx are trying the last few games, I want you to like rewatch the games and only look at Kayla McBride. Like let your eyeball just follow Kayla McBride and her effort on defense the last few games. She's literally treating this like a pickup game at 10 p.m. And
that's what the team has said too. Like after the Indiana game, Shepard comes out to the podium and it was 100% our effort. That was the problem.
Yep.
Like nothing else. Cheryl is a competitive. I'm trying to think. I think one of the New York guys that came on my podcast called her a competitive psychopath. So like Cheryl wants to win every minute of every game. And I want to say for the last 2 weeks, she's just been like, our effort sucks. People are just going out there and playing. Like, this isn't Lynx basketball. But it's hard to find that effort when you have a 5, 6, 7 game lead in the standings for the 1 seed. And you're, like you said earlier, they are just kind of accidentally beating some of these teams, it seems like, where they just click in for 8 minutes in the third quarter and they're up by 20 and then it's over. So you can fault them for that, of like, you're professional athletes, you should show professionalism. Indiana fans only get to see you once a year, like, you should play hard in front of them. I understand all of those angles, but at the same time, human nature is pretty undefeated. And when you're playing a team that's fighting for a playoff live, like their playoff lives, and you're just going out there knowing that all of your stats are settled, you're not going to boost anything, you're not going to climb in the standings, you're not going to fall in the standings, it's hard to, I think, motivate that same level of passion.
And hey, the people who are complaining, if the superstars were hurt during the playoffs, you'd be complaining a lot more. So
yes.
And I echo everything you said about the Dream and the Aces. Like, I also think that if there's anyone that's going to pull off the upset, it's going to be the Dream. It's because Brittany Griner is playing at a high level and Brianna Jones is playing at a high level, and the team is the Dream are also shooting the lights out of the ball. That's what it's going to take. They are capable of doing that in a playoff series, and they're the only team that's capable of doing that multiple times in a playoff series, in my eyes, which is why they are a threat. They are the secondary threat to win the championship in my eyes. And I think the best thing that can happen for the Lynx is the Dream and Aces facing off in the semifinals. And that would be not just because they could draw the Aces in the finals then, which I would pick the Lynx every single time against the Aces, because Cheryl Reeve can just scheme against Asia Wilson and force 2025 Chelsea Gray, Jewel Lloyd, and Jackie Young to make all the plays. Or at the very least, they've drawn a Dream team that was tired out by playing an Aces team that has been physical with them in the past. Like, those head-to-heads, the Dream versus Aces head-to-heads, have been physical battles every single time. So the fact that the Aces have won 15 in a row, it just better news for the Lynx that the Aces might knock out the Dream themselves. I echo everything that you said there. I want to just conclude this segment by thanking Andrew for showing up to be our first guest. Please, Andrew, plug anything you would like to. Obviously, go read Andrew's zone coverage articles. Anything else you want to plug for our viewers?
Yeah, you can follow me on any social media. It's aduke, ADUKEMN, so aduke.mn all together. I have articles that come out on zone coverage usually every Wednesday and Saturday. It's been a little weird with the WNBA because just news happens differently than the NBA. And then I do host a Lynx post-game live stream that turns into a podcast, much like yours does here. That goes live about an hour after every Lynx game. It's brought to you by Hitting the Hardwood Network, and it is called The Missing Lynx. So if you are into the WNBA, want to come and hang out with a bunch of Lynx fans, feel free to come check that out. It's live on YouTube and on my X account after every game.
Andrew, if we have you on in the future during the Minnesota Timberwolves season, it's going to be a completely different vibe. I promise. It's going to be a lot more argumentative, not necessarily agreeing about everything. People know me. I'm a Jaden McDaniels and Naz Reid super fan, but I'll argue about the other players if you want me to, and we could make that happen. But for now, thank you again for being our first guest. And for those watching, again, go follow Andrew for the WNBA playoffs and with NBA season coming for Timberwolves stuff as well. But we'll see you in episode 2 with a new guest for the Industry Babies.
My name ringing bells on the internet. I am not finished yet. This is all part of the plan. We about to get digital rich. Digital rich.